There is nothing remarkable about the house that I saw that would suggest that this was anything other than a targeted attack. You have to have some idea that it's going to explode in coverage because of who Nancy is related to. And knowing that, you start working a case like this as a homicide from the beginning. I had heard that he transferred some of his best people out of the unit for some sort of personality conflict.
Hey guys, it's your host of In the Know, Jackson Buhai here with TMZ. Now, I want to talk about something quite compelling today with regards to the Nancy Guthrie case. The Wall Street Journal recently published a story detailing just how botched the Nancy Guthrie investigation was from the get-go. And today I have brought on someone quite prominent in the true crime space, the great former detective John Bueller. John, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jackson, for having me.
So, this post from the Journal is quite intriguing, and it details Nanos had put a certain sergeant in the Pima County Sheriff's Department on the case. He, quite frankly, mishandled the case, according to the Journal, and then right after the post went live, he promoted this sergeant. What does that tell you about how serious they are taking the Nancy Guthrie investigation as a former detective like yourself?
Well, the worrisome part about that is when a police administrator or a law enforcement executive makes decision based on personal preference or loyalty or things like that, and they don't put the best person in charge, it does create problems in the investigation. Now, as I sit here, I don't know any of these players by face. I've never worked with any of them, so I hate to put too much shade on them. But one of the things that we found, the success rate at Modesto Police Department when I worked there, when it came to solving homicides, was tenure in the unit and being mentored and trained by experienced people. That way you don't make the mistakes that you would if you don't have any experience in it. And so I had heard that he transferred some of his best people out of the unit for some sort of personality conflict, and that really doesn't do the case any good. It might make somebody feel good, but you got to remember who you're working for there. You're working for the victim and the victim's family. Personality should take a distant fifth place to that.
Our producers have told me that you were actually, during the first week of the Nancy Guthrie investigation, at Nancy Guthrie's house.
Yeah, it wasn't really the first week. It was a couple of weeks after I got called to go down there and do some on-air things for a couple of different networks. And so I was down there for about a week. Very interesting, very different when you go down there from what you see if you're sitting in the living room watching it on television.
You were at Nancy Guthrie's house a couple weeks after the initial abduction.
Yeah.
And you've said before that nothing about the property stood out to you. Was there anything else when you were down in Tucson that stood out to you about the investigation or the scene itself?
Well, I can't comment too much about the investigation because they were pretty tight-lipped about it. They didn't let a lot of information out into the public. Now, that, of course, creates some problems for people doing these kind of things, you and I, and for the people watching this, because we don't have specific information to necessarily talk about. However, it does really good things for the investigation. The limited information that trickles out is always good to keep, especially crime-specific information, under wraps. When it came to going down there, I was at the sheriff's office for most mornings doing some live stuff in the morning that it was recorded. And it wasn't until I was summoned to go out there in the afternoon one day to meet up with Griff Jenkins and his producer and the cameraman. And we actually toured the neighborhood. We weren't really allowed to go on the Guthrie property, but we could stand at the end of the driveway and look up the driveway at the front of the house. It's very hilly down there, so there's the houses sit off the streets a bit. From Nancy's house, I don't even know if you could see the neighbor's house across the street because of the amount of cactus and things like that, and the Joshua trees and things that grow in the desert. So if somebody was planning an attack and planning on making an entry in the house at night, it would be real easy for them, if they were on foot, to avoid detection with an oncoming car. The headlights would illuminate the area before the car would get and the driver would get in view of the person, so they could quickly hide to avoid detection. There is nothing remarkable about the house that I saw that would suggest that this was anything other than a targeted attack. There's no reason for it to be picked because it wasn't really remarkable, beautiful property, but it was like most of the other ones in the neighborhood. So it's always speculation, but it's based on experience that it seemed to me there was a reason to attack Nancy at that residence.
Now, you said back in February that if this wasn't run like a homicide from day one, evidence gets lost, even if a suspect is identified later. We know now deputies spent hours deciding whether blood on the porch was even significant, and the scene wasn't taped off from the general public reporters for 3 days. In your professional opinion, what's actually gone now that cannot be recovered?
Well, there's any number of things that you could never recover again. There could be trace DNA evidence, touch DNA evidence. There could be fibers. There could be hairs. There could be it could be a bubble gum wrapper or anything that the suspect may have dropped when he was there that could have blown away from the wind or not documented. The blood in particular, you can't always date when the blood was down there, but talking to other family members, you could find out if that blood that was there at the front of the house had been there before this abduction took place. So you want to be able to bracket that kind of physical evidence. Furthermore, even though you're not going to tell the family and you're not going to tell the media what you're doing, in a case like this, that you have to have some idea that it's going to explode in coverage because of who Nancy is related to. And knowing that, you start working a case like this as a homicide from the beginning. It doesn't mean that it was a homicide, but if you don't preserve the evidence and limit intrusion into the crime scene after you've discovered something happened, you run the risk of having information come out of the crime scene that doesn't need to be in public. Case in point, the watch that was found in, I think it was a smartwatch or an Apple Watch that was found by the bed, and a floodlight in the backyard that was broken. Specific details like that should only be known to law enforcement when they process a crime scene and would only be known outside of the investigation if somebody actually went there. So the more time that goes between when you secure the scene and the more people have access to learning about specific evidence like that, the more your suspect pool opens up, and it's more difficult for the detectives to determine if somebody was involved when they interview and interrogate them at a later time.
You mentioned the general scenery around Nancy Guthrie's house. The neighborhood was quite hilly, her house was quite isolated. Let's operate under the assumption that this was a targeted attack and they wanted to single Nancy Guthrie out, which is quite evident, but we don't know that to be a fact yet.
Right.
It's quite interesting to me how isolated her house is. If you were working on the team, whether it be with the Pima County Sheriff's Office or the FBI, and you were trying to track down the people that did this, how are you going to do so with little to no CCTV cameras in the area or any other methods to track the car or people that took her in such, again, deserted, isolated area?
Well, I wouldn't be looking just specifically at her house. I understand that they had sent out a request to the neighborhood for neighbors to take a look at their Nest or their Ring cameras and see if anything was going on. But I would broaden that out a bit. If there's a convenience store near intersections that lead into the neighborhood, I would want to seize the tapes from in and around the time the abduction occurred to see what vehicles are turning into that neighborhood. Now, it might just be neighbors coming home from a late dinner or a cocktail party or something like that, but you would want to take a look at any type of license plate information that you have that would allow you to run whoever the registered owner is on that, whether it's a rental company or something like that, or maybe it's a guy who has a car. You run his plate, you find out who he is, you do a little look into his past, you find out he's got some prior history of domestic violence or violent crime or something like that that makes him a more likely suspect to do something like this. He could have a gambling debt. Maybe he's got a vindictive thing that's going on with Savannah. Maybe she said something on the air that triggered him that he didn't like. There's any number of things, but you have to expand the search more than just the neighborhood because it's really difficult. Some of those cameras might capture the entryway to the house, but they might not catch a view all the way out to the street because of the way the house is situated on the properties.
So again, if there's no way to track where that car went, if there's not even a shot of that license plate, what other methods of investigation are at the Pima County Sheriff's Department's disposal?
Well, I don't know how many plate readers they have down there. Different agencies handle this differently. There are license plate plate readers that are located where I live out here in Florida. You can't get into the where I live without a license plate reader catching you on the main street coming into the where I live. So we know, at least you know what license plates are coming in here. Now, of course, you don't even know if that belongs to the car, but if you check the plate and you find out that the license plate was for a Buick and it turns out that it was really on a Toyota, well, then you got something to work with on that. But the further out that you can do your search, the more information that you could possibly have. Now, there's a keyword search thing that sometimes can be located by the tech people. There's a lot of really good technical detectives that have tech background in computer forensics. And if somebody entered in a keyword search to Nancy Guthrie's address, there might be a way for them to retrieve that, because how many people are going to, go into Apple Maps or something like that and key in her address that should be documented and stored for a period of time. I don't know what the shelf life of that is, but one of the guys that I know, a friend of mine named Kip, he's really good at this stuff, and he would know how to search for that stuff. I don't know if the sheriff's office reached out to anybody that has those capabilities, but there are people in criminal investigations roles that have the ability to locate that stuff. So if you have somebody that is driving for Amazon and they key in that information and there was a delivery, well, you might be able to rule that person out, but you'd still want to look at them in case there was some reason for them to come back. You'd want to take a look at anybody that made a delivery from, like, say, a big box store where they were delivering a refrigerator or a washer and dryer, if they went into the garage or went into the house. Any delivery person that could have a checkered background, you'd want to take a look at them as a potential suspect. And then over and above that, if Nancy had a plumber or an electrician or a roofing contractor or anybody in the last several months, wherever you want to cut it off, you would want to take a look at people like that, not because so much you're expecting a plumber or an electrician to be involved in this, but the simple reason that you want to clear them from suspicion so that the defense can't attack you when you go to trial, when you get the right guy. Because things like that, if you don't do them, the defense, rightfully or not, they're trying to get their client off, are going to parade that around in the courtroom to show that you were lazy, you didn't do your job, you didn't check all available leads and things like that. So thoroughness is really essential. And the only way to get thorough in these things is you got to be taught by somebody who did it for years and passes their experience on to you, like happened to me when I was much younger and going up into this job.
Mr. Bueller, thank you for coming on today and giving all of this compelling information to our audience. I sincerely appreciate it and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, Jackson. Good being with you.